Welcome to Prime 9, the countdown show that covers the very best in baseball. Guaranteed to start arguments, not end them. In this episode, we present the best player at each position in the 1950s. 1 decade, 9 players, Prime 9. To many, the 1950s was the golden age of baseball.
Another hit for the famous number 9.
Some of the greatest ever to play the game plied their craft during this decade, and it sure wasn't easy to pick just 9. We looked only at the player's body of work in the 50s. And they also had to play a particular position for the bulk of the decade.
Power hitter Eddie Matthews will start at third base.
In constructing our all-50s team, we had to make some truly difficult choices. After all, this was the decade of Willie, Mickey, and the Duke, all center fielders.
Snyder dazzled the crowd with a brilliant shoestring catch.
But only one of them could make our list. Who is it? You'll find out real soon. But first, the all-50s right fielder, number 9 in your scorebook, on Prime 9. Al Kaline was just 18 years old when he debuted with the Detroit Tigers in June of '53. One of few players ever to go right from high school to the majors.
Whether or not I was going to be able to hit enough to be a regular player at that early age, I didn't know, and nobody knew.
Well, it didn't take Al long to make an impact.
The exciting youngster went straight from the sandlots to right field on the Detroit Tiger team.
For in just his second full season, at the age of 20, Al hit .340, still the youngest player ever to win a batting title.
That .340 season, when he was a youngster, was like a launching pad for him. It shot him high up into the baseball firmament, and he stayed there.
Al hit .311 in the 50s and was selected to 5 All-Star teams. In the decade's final season, he led the league in slugging percentage, but there was more to Al Kaline than a mighty bat.
There's nothing he couldn't do. Hit, run, field, throw. Great team man.
Al would win 3 Gold Glove awards in the 50s, earning a reputation as the best right fielder in the game.
I was a much better outfielder than I was a hitter, and I really took a lot of pride in playing the outfield.
Leaping Al Kaline.
He was a flawless outfielder, as good a right fielder as ever lived.
Kaline makes a leaping catch.
The first ballot Hall of Famer played 22 seasons, all in Detroit, and is without question one of the most beloved athletes ever to play in the city.
Al Kaline's the best modern Tiger, no question about that, and he epitomizes the modern Tiger star.
Mickey Mantle emerged as our all-50s center fielder, even though he began his career with the Yankees in right. But he soon took on the task of replacing a living legend in center.
This was the coming great star of the New York Yankees. And this was going to be my last year, and we all felt that he could carry the load from there on in.
When Joe retired, Mantle became the full-time center fielder in '52. And the switch-hitting phenom embarked on an amazing career.
Mickey Mantle's hitting home runs to all fields with the most powerful stroke ever possessed by a switch hitter.
Mantle had lightning in his wrist or something. He had more power than anyone I've ever seen, and more speed than anyone I've ever seen.
Mantle is one of the fastest men in the big leagues, as well as a power hitter. How about that?
Mickey Mantle is the guy that everybody's talking about now. They talk about 5 tools, and I said, what's 5 tools? We'd never heard about a 5-tool ball player.
And every one of those tools was on full display in the 50s as Mantle led the league in runs scored 4 times and captured 3 home run titles, hitting some of the longest blasts ever seen.
This is a fantastic sort of moonshot that sets Mickey Mantle apart.
Mantle hit mammoth home runs, gargantuan home runs.
The Mick won MVP awards in both '56 and '57, with his 1956 campaign often hailed as one of the greatest seasons of all time.
Here you have Mickey Mantle at the peak of his powers. He hits .353. He hits 52 home runs. He drives in 130 runs, wins the Triple Crown.
And the Triple Crown that he won wasn't just the American League Triple Crown, it was the Major League Triple Crown, and no one has done that since.
Mickey Mantle was probably the best all-around ball player in the 1950s, despite the fact he spent much of the decade doing all this on some bad wheels.
Mickey played under enormous physical pressures, wrapping his leg every day, playing while he was injured.
And he was in the top echelon of all-time players despite those injuries. Mickey Mantle, at his best, was one of the 10 best non-pitchers who ever lived.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the all-1950s team. You've seen 2/3 of our outfield. What's left is left. In your scorebook, that's number 7. Even before the 1950s, Ted Williams was already considered one of the best hitters in the game.
Another Ted Williams home run.
But Ted was not satisfied with just that.
Ted Williams was out to establish himself as the greatest hitter that ever lived. And Williams grew to believe that he was that good. He believed it fervently.
He let you know he was the best hitter. I had the locker next to him in Fenway, and that's all we ever talked about was how good he hit.
With each passing year, Ted continued to hone his skills, becoming one of the best at breaking the art of hitting down to a science.
You know the type of pitcher that you're hitting against.
He constantly studies the opposing pitchers to learn their motions.
Are you more inclined to try to pull him? What did you do last game against him? Then you start breaking him down from there. Then you've had the first time at bat. What's his best pitch today? How fast is he today? You're thinking about the game.
Ted's cerebral approach helped him earn the highest on-base and slugging percentages in the decade. And even though he missed almost 2 full seasons to the Korean War, he was still selected to 9 All-Star teams.
When Williams digs in, excitement mounts.
Like in 1957, when the 39-year-old Williams hit .388 to win the batting title. Then won it again the next year at the not-so-tender age of 40.
Another hit for the famous number 9.
When the 50s finally came to an end, Teddy Ballgame had made a rather convincing case for himself as perhaps the greatest hitter the game has ever seen.
If you're going to ask who was the greatest hitter in the history of baseball, and your answer is anybody but Ted Williams or Babe Ruth, well, you're wrong.
When Ernie Banks played his first game at shortstop for the Cubs, they had no idea that he'd be their power hitter of the future.
When I came along in 1953, I was very thin. I only weighed 159 pounds, and you wouldn't think that I could even hit a ball. I mean, most pitchers just said, boy, I looked at you at the plate, looked like the wind was going to blow you down.
He was amazing because you don't expect to see shortstops hit a lot of home runs. And he was slight of build, and it was very surprising how far he could hit the ball.
How far and how often, as Banks proceeded to display more home run power than any shortstop before him, a feat that, in time, surprised even Ernie himself.
It slowly began to come into my mind that what you do is very unique. You're a shortstop with power.
Banks hit more than 40 home runs 4 times in the 50s. And although he only played 6 full seasons in the decade, he still hit over 100 more home runs than any other shortstop in the 50s.
Hey! He did it! Ernie Banks!
And his slugging percentage by decade's end was 130 points higher than anyone else at his position. What's more, Ernie's the only shortstop in baseball history to win back-to-back MVP awards in '58 and '59 for a Cubs team that finished 5th both years.
Most of the time, a guy had to be on a winning club to be the most valuable player. And that was the first time they went away from that because he was so dominating.
Ernie Banks was the shortstop of the 50s, and his Hall of Fame feats were matched only by his love for the game.
Sunshine, fresh air, we got the team behind us, so let's play two.
To be on a baseball field was just such a wonderful place. So that's why I always said, boy, it's a beautiful day. Let's play two.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the all-1950s team. Al Kaline is in right, and the Mick is our center fielder. Left field belongs to the splendid Splinter, followed by shortstop Ernie Banks, which means it's time for third base, number 5.
Power hitter Eddie Matthews will start at third base.
Eddie got everyone's attention right off the bat when he blasted 25 home runs as a rookie in 1952.
He had just a beautiful swing, maybe a perfect swing. He was just awesome.
He then almost doubled that with 47 long balls his second year. A power display so prodigious, it helped change the very nature of the position.
Eddie Matthews really revolutionized third base. Before he came along, most home runs a third baseman ever hit was 192.
Eddie Matthews drilled it hard to right.
Matthews hit 190 home runs by age 24.
Everyone likes to see Eddie bang that long ball,
which he did to the tune of 299 in the 50s. A remarkable 107 more home runs than the next third baseman.
His power hitting was legendary, and he was easily one of the most feared sluggers in the National League during the 50s.
Scouting report, good hit, good field.
Matthews put a great deal of effort into becoming a complete ball player.
Eddie Matthews was one of the hardest working individuals that I ever met. When he first came up, he couldn't feel worth a damn. But if you came out to the ballpark, he'd be the first one there working on his defense.
Everyone likes to see Eddie bang that long ball, but he also has quick hands and a rifle-like arm.
He had a strong arm, he had good range, and he was one of the premier defensive players at third base.
Behind their rock at the hot corner, the Braves captured a World Series title in 1957.
Matthews makes a miraculous backhanded stab at the ball, and the Milwaukee Braves are the new world champions.
The bulk of Eddie's 9 All-Star selections took place in the 50s. No question, he was the best of the decade.
He was an all-around great ball player and the premier third baseman in the 50s. Everybody admired Eddie Matthews.
Here's Nellie Fox, peppery second sacker of the White Sox.
Nellie Fox debuted for the White Sox in 1950 and proceeded to play second base like a fine violin.
Nelson Fox was highly regarded as a defensive player. He had the fielding statistics to back up a very high reputation.
But second baseman Nellie Fox makes a beautiful stop and throws Gardner out.
He led American League second baseman in putouts and assists consistently for about a decade. He was a real ball of fire in the field, a non-stop ball player.
In 1956, Fox was paired with shortstop Luis Aparicio, and together they formed one of the great double play combos of all time.
Nellie had such soft hands that he could get the ball to Aparicio, and they made the good pivot, and of course got a lot of double plays that way.
One thing Nellie rarely heard in his career was strike 3.
Fox was famous for not striking out. His highest total of strikeouts in any season of his career was 18.
He never struck out. He would strike out 10, 11, 12 times a year, and he'd be going up to bat about 700 times a year. Whitey Ford said that in 12 years, he struck out Fox one time, and he thinks the umpire blew the call.
Fox opens the 6th inning with a single.
Nellie Fox could definitely get on base. He led the American League in hits 4 times in the 1950s. He also led in hit by pitches several times. He was a guy who defined his way on base and had a reputation as a good base runner.
Jacob Nelson Fox won 2 Gold Gloves in the 50s and was selected to 9 All-Star games. And in 1959, this slight second sacker was the AL MVP.
You know, he didn't have a great arm, didn't have power, didn't run real fast, but he was the most valuable player.
Though modest in size, no one loomed larger at second base in the 50s than Fox.
He was not gifted with overwhelming physical ability, but he took what he had and he made a Hall of Fame career out of it.
Our first baseman of the 50s was Gil Hodges, part of a star-studded Brooklyn Dodgers team that captured 5 pennants in the decade.
We're talking about Roy Campanella, Pee Wee Reese, Duke Snyder. Hodges was the solid man on that team. He was the anchor of that infield. A great first baseman always is, and Hodges was a great first baseman.
And up comes big Gil Hodges.
His presence in a lineup meant a lot. He was one of the big guns, so to speak.
The thing about Hodges in the 50s, he was just remarkably consistent. Every year, he would be in the top 3, 4, 5 in homers or RBIs. So by the end of the decade, he put up some incredible totals.
Hodges' output at the plate is testament to his power. But as good as he was with the bat, he was even better when he slipped on a glove.
Gil was one of the best fielding first basemen in his era, maybe of all time.
Hodges makes a beautiful backhanded stop.
He got the nickname human vacuum cleaner because he just scooped everything up, bad throws from the infielders, whatever. He saved as many errors for the guys out there from bad throws than anybody else that ever played first base.
The first 3 years the Gold Glove was awarded, starting in 1957, he won it, which was towards the tail end of his career, and he was still considered one of the best at his position.
Although he put up some impressive numbers in the 50s, Gil is not in the Hall of Fame. No doubt a sore point for Dodger fans who saw him help clinch Brooklyn's first and only title.
In the 1955 World Series, when the Dodgers finally beat the Yankees, Game 7 was a 2-0 win, and Hodges drove in both runs. If he wasn't already one of the most beloved Brooklyn Dodgers ever, that cemented it.
We now return to Prime 9, where this week we're featuring the all-1950s team. These are the very best players at each position from a decade that is often referred to as the golden age of baseball. So now it's time for numbers 1 and 2, the 50s best catcher and pitcher. We begin behind the plate with number 2.
Lawrence Peter Berra, known to everyone as Yogi.
Yogi Berra is often remembered for his quirky personality, but he was also one of the greatest catchers of all time, and certainly the best of the 50s.
He did more things on a baseball field that helped the team win than anyone I ever knew.
What more could you ask for in Yogi Berra, the Yanks' indestructible catcher?
He was a catcher who played a lot of games. He rarely was out of the lineup.
No one in the 1950s caught more than Yogi's 1,316 games.
But a perfect throw by Yogi Berra rubs him out.
A 3-time MVP and 10-time All-Star in the decade, Yogi was as good at the plate as he was behind it.
Yogi was probably one of the greatest competitors that I played with and the best clutch hitter on the Yankees.
Give him the bat and put men on base, and he was just disaster for the opposing team.
And it's another homer over the right center wall. It's 10 runs batted in for Yogi.
Berra was consistently clutch and almost never saw a pitch he didn't like.
Best bad ball hitter there's ever been. I can't imagine anybody swinging at some of the pitches that he swung at, and he hit them good. He hit them right on the button.
But nothing says more about Yogi Berra than the fact that he was a winner.
It's not just the number of home runs, RBIs, and his batting average. What was really important was the fact that he was the catcher on so many pennant-winning teams and World Series-winning teams.
And the Yankees are champions. Look at Berra.
With Yogi behind the plate in the 50s, the Yankees won an unfathomable 6 championships.
The contribution that Yogi made to the Yankees can't be understated. He was a magnificent catcher and really came up to have some great moments.
This is Warren Spahn, the stylish southpaw.
The winningest left-hander in baseball history, with 363 victories, was a model of consistency throughout the 50s. And the fact that he got his kicks on the mound played a big role in his success.
Warren Spahn had that huge leg kick. His delivery was flawless. For him, if somebody else tried to lift their leg that high, they would end up in the hospital.
Warren Spahn's classic delivery, said by many to be the best in baseball.
When you faced him as a hitter, what you saw is a leg coming towards you, and then an elbow, and then his glove, and finally the ball.
Though not blessed with magnificent stuff, Spahn succeeded by outwitting the men he faced.
So many pitchers nowadays that are pitching are thinking about striking people out. Warren Spahn was just thinking about getting people out.
Warren Spahn, the crafty left-hander, delivers the pitch.
His fastball was not, that great, but he could change speeds better than anybody. He said to me, the biggest thing is to outsmart the hitter and try to stay one, quote-unquote, pitch ahead of him. That's what he was able to do.
The pitch on the way, a swing and a miss and a bad pitch in the dirt.
Warren Spahn, thanks very much, and good luck in 1957. My pleasure, thank you.
Well, as luck would have it, Spahn won both a championship and the Cy Young Award.
What a pitcher he was, and boy, his record proves it.
Spahn was relentless, completing at least 20 games 7 times in the decade, and no one in the 50s won more games than Warren.
He was 20-game winner every year. He had a great attitude, a great work ethic, a tremendous competitor. He was the ultimate pitcher.
The fact that Robin Roberts, who won 199 games and threw more than 3,000 innings in the 50s, is not our starting pitcher tells you everything you need to know about this golden era of baseball. We could make another all-50s team from those who missed the cut, and it might rival the first team from most other decades. After all, Stan Musial, who hit .330 in the 50s, is still on the bench.
Stan Musial of the St. Louis Cardinals led the National League in hitting.
And then there's Roy Campanella, who won 3 MVP awards in the decade.
From-key catcher Roy Campanella, a 300 hitter for the major part of the season, looms as one of the game's better backstops.
As for the outfield, our backup squad features Hank Aaron in right.
Cameron Hank is in a class by himself.
And both Duke Snider and Willie Mays still vying for center. Surely one of them would be willing to slide over to left.
And the Duke makes a brilliant one-handed stab.
Fact is, we've got the core of a really good second team in the phenomenal 50s. That's our Prime 9. What's yours?